St. Patrick's Day! Today we are making shepherd's pie. Here are the ingredients that you need to have. Red potatoes, Hunt's tomato paste, baby carrots, green peas, corn, beef broth, extra virgin olive oil, butter, sharp white cheddar cheese, pepper, oyster sauce, ground beef, and normal potatoes. That's all you need. We're going to start with potatoes. Here you go, Phil.
Oh, thank you, Chloe. Thank you for introducing all that stuff. So we're going to do potatoes first, and the reason we're going to do potatoes first is because with everything in cooking, timing is really important. Potatoes are going to take the longest, and so we're going to do them first and get them boiling.
Why do we boil the potatoes?
Well, because it, cooks them, makes them soft so you can eat them.
Versus pan frying.
I mean, if everybody's probably been into a raw potato, and it's, I don't like them raw. I don't really like them just really plain. You gotta put butter, or gravy, or salt, and garlic, or whatever in them to get them to taste good. I mean, otherwise they're pretty bland.
How long does it take to boil the potatoes?
I'd say the potatoes should take about 20 minutes to boil, especially these small ones. If you have really big Idaho potatoes that come around in the summer, then it'd probably take maybe 40 minutes. But since these are pretty small, you don't have to cook them that long.
Now, do you put them in whole or do you chop them into pieces?
I'm going to chop them up into some pieces because, they're mashed potatoes, and what I'm trying to do is just get them to cook as fast as possible. So I'll chop them up a little bit, but not so much that they fall apart. Okay, so I'm just going to finish peeling the last potato here. Just a quick tutorial on how to peel a potato. I know it seems easy, but I'm just going to do it really quick because it makes peeling potatoes a lot easier. So I'm just going to take this potato, look at it longwise. I'm just going to cut a big long strip off it all the way around. And just like a typewriter, I'm going to just peel straight down. I'm not going to worry about if I miss anything, even though I'm going to try not to miss anything. I'm just going to take all of it off. If you hack away at it, it's going to take you 10 times longer, and you're going to waste a lot of the potato. Then I'll just have a couple little spots on it that are probably a little deeper, and I'm just going to peel those down and done. So then we're just going to chop the potatoes up really quick here. So just like usual, you hold your stuff, fingers in.
Now, how do you hold a potato when you cut it? Let's see.
So I'm always going to hold my hand like a C. And I'm going to just get my fingers on them, and I'll always make sure my thumb's a little tucked in. So
now, how big are these slices?
It doesn't make any difference, really. Big enough so that they just don't dissolve in the water. But you could. I'm just cut some like that. Cut them in quarters, like that. Okay, so now that the potatoes are done, I just guesstimated on the potatoes. The recipe calls for 6 cups. I don't know if I'll need that much, but it calls for a lot of potatoes. So, I don't know if this is a lot of potatoes, but it seems like enough to me. So we're going to take these over. I'm gonna get my water boiling. With potatoes, unlike noodles, it doesn't really matter if we have it boiling at first. And this grill top goes really fast as far as boiling water. So I'm just gonna put about a teaspoon of salt. And for some things, you know, you need to like put the exact amount of salt. Baking is an exact science, so you put exactly the amount. But for putting salt into water for your potatoes or noodles, or it doesn't really matter. You don't want to put a cup, but you know, like a little more than a teaspoon. So for me, you know, I can pretty much guesstimate for this purpose how, you know, a teaspoon of salt. And I would just dump it in my hand, and I would say that little cup in my hand is about a teaspoon of salt. And I put it in my water, and the reason I'm doing that, as usual, is to increase the boiling point of my water. In this instance, it'll actually give the potatoes a little bit of flavor. So we're just going to put in our potatoes, and we're going to let those boil until they're soft.
Because we're environmentally friendly and we have a big garden, I'm going to go put these potato peelings inside our garden.
So shepherd's pie. Now we're getting the potatoes boiling. Those should be done shortly. So now we're going to make the rest of it. So I'm going to cook 2 pounds of ground beef. So I'm just going to quickly throw that in the pan here.
And this is called what to the meat?
I'm browning it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cook it. And then I'm gonna drain it, and then I'm gonna follow through with the rest of the recipe. The next thing I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna chop some carrots. I don't exactly want this knife, but we will just, you know, I'm gonna cut these about maybe like 1/4 of an inch. You know, you don't have to cut one carrot at a time. You know, you can cut as many as you want. But you know, that's kind of what I'm looking for. These will shrink up.
Is there a specific width that you want?
Yeah, so about 1/4 of an inch, I would say. It is important. You got to think about how it's going to cook, and carrots take a long time to cook. But you don't want them to totally disappear, so you don't want to cut them too thin, but also not too thick. So I mean, that's kind of what I'm looking for. Shepherd's pie is a Scottish dish. It was invented around the 1700s, and they know that because that's when they started harvesting potatoes in Scotland. And it's not actually an Irish dish, it's a Scottish dish, just like corned beef and cabbage actually isn't an Irish dish. They didn't even have enough meat to eat back then, so they, you know, mostly cooked a lot with potatoes. I'm just going to quickly take a little wooden spoon here and cut over here and stir the meat.
Is there a difference between using metal dishes and wood dishes?
Like for my pans, it doesn't really matter about what I use. Like I can use, that's why I like these pans. Not only do they have like a high copper content, which is more conductive, they cook more evenly, but they don't have like a no-stick surface, and I personally don't think people should be using no-stick surfaces, because if you notice your no-stick surface, if you're using metal with it, so if you're using metal with your no-stick surface, which you shouldn't be, you should always be using wood because it won't scratch your no-stick surface. But even that, over time, you know, your no-stick surface gets those little scratch marks in it, and all that's going into your food, which, you know, in my opinion, I don't know if you should be getting whatever's in those no-stick surfaces in your food. And I guess there's been studies where it says that you're not, those no-stick surfaces, some of them are toxic. So anyway, so I go with these metal pans, which have a metal surface. The other thing that's nice about them is when you burn something on the bottom, you know, you can clean this thing with an SOS pad and get it off. And it doesn't really matter that you scratch the bottom. You can use them over and over and over and over and over again for years. And yes, they cost a little more money, but you know, I've had these pans and I cook a lot, and I still have them. The surface is perfect. Great. So that's, just got my meat all chopped up.
Now, how do I know when this meat is done?
You won't see any more pink in it. And so what I'll do here is I'll just cook it a little bit more while I get my carrots ready, and then I'm going to drain off the grease. And,
what does drain off the grease mean?
Like all that stuff in here is, fat, oils, and stuff like that. In my opinion, I try to get as much of this out of my food as I possibly can.
Can that go down the drain? Can the grease go down the drain?
No, it shouldn't go in your drains. It should get poured into a little cup or something like that. Definitely a tin can that you can maybe keep on the side of your sink or something like that. And this is also something the grease I could just dump in the garden with everything else. Is drain the ground beef. Use a knife, make sure this doesn't spill, and I'm going to get as much of this grease off as I possibly can. And I do want a tiny bit for what I'm doing, but...
Now, why do you want a tiny bit for what you're doing?
Well, because I'm going to put the carrots and everything, and I'm going to actually make a sauce in this. So, I put this over back on the grill. I'm going to kind of put it on low, and I'm just going to let it, because I got the grease off, it'll actually now start to brown. I'm going to throw the carrots in, and this is kind of why I need some of the grease, is to help to cook these carrots without burning and everything else. I'd say that's about maybe a cup and a half of carrots.
Now, how are you cutting these onions for this recipe? For this recipe.
Well, I'll cut this one first, and then I'll show you really quick. But that's kind of what I'm looking for. Like for this, I want the onions to be a little bit chunky, but not too much. But you want them to actually be a little bit of substance and give texture to your food. So you have my onion. Just gonna cut the ends off really quick. Just peel off the skin on it, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm just same as always. I'm gonna cut it into maybe 1/4 inch, 1/3 of an inch slices. This last one's always a little tricky.
My favorite kitchen tool you ever had was these onion glasses.
Then I'm gonna stack them up. Yeah, the onion glasses were cool. We have those packed away, but I'm gonna stack it up, and because this is the easiest way to do it and the fastest, and I'm gonna deal with this onion as fast as I possibly can. And then I'm just gonna cut it the other way, and it's gonna, because the onion is made in concentric circles, I can easily just do this, and it makes its own little pieces. And then right on the ends, what I'm doing is there's nothing you can do about these end pieces, so you kind of got to go back and either take them out, like that big chunk, or that. But that's what you're left with, is that kind of thing. So now I'm going to take the onions over, and I'm going to throw that in the ground beef. And so now I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna stir this into my ground beef and get that cooking. And after that, we're gonna cook this maybe for about, I'd say what they'll say is until the onions are translucent, which means that the onions kind of start to get almost clear. They'll be soft and they'll be clear. The carrots probably won't be, be cooked all the way, but that's okay because after we're done, we're gonna throw it in the oven. So then, as soon as I get this stirred in, I'm just gonna go right over and grab my potatoes because they're done now, and I'm gonna drain those. Here's my potatoes. They're cooking. That's what we got. They look pretty much done to me.
What does it mean when they look done?
They're kind of a little soft on the outside, almost starchy looking on the
Yeah.
outside. And I just reached in there. If I put the thing like that, I can just quickly reach in there, push it,
And break the
and
potato
it's
apart.
hot, but it's it feels soft, and that's what we want. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna drain my potatoes. I'm just going to use a colander. I could just use a knife too, but this is way easier. So get them all out of here. Okay, so we have our potatoes drained, and we have those right here. I'd say that's pretty close to the 4 to 6 cups I was thinking. Oops. I'm going to put those in the food processor. I'm going to put it on really quick. I'm going to put about let's go with about third of a cup, quarter of a cup of butter. Throw that in. Then I'm going to put about a teaspoon of garlic salt. Ching, ching, ching. Garlic salt. You'll find that a common theme in my cooking is garlic. I like garlic in just about anything, and I love garlic mashed potatoes. So,
And garlic is super healthy for many parts of your body.
yeah, very healthy. So, I'll find my lid here. So, put my lid on my food processor. I'm going to mash this. This is the total lazy man way to do it. I use my food processor for a lot of stuff. If you don't have one, you might want to think about getting one because they're awesome for so many things. You could do this, but this is the way you're going to make mashed potatoes and not have chunks. Okay, so we've food processed my mashed potatoes. I've got them pretty mushy, so now I'm just going to add about a third of a cup of milk. And I'm just going to guess because it doesn't really matter that much. A little bit, but I'm a pretty good guesser. If you want to, you can measure it out. I'm just going to do that really quick. As with everything, it's to taste, so which means you taste it. So I'm just going to dip my finger in it. I don't think they're salty enough, so I'm going to add a little bit more garlic salt. And the reason I'm adding garlic salt is it just makes it easier for me because it said add garlic powder and garlic salt. And so I'm just killing 2 birds with 1 stone and then adding both at the same time. Just blend it one more time. Taste it. That's like super good. I'm gonna add.
I need to try too.
Definitely try it, Jill. It's tasty.
It's fantastic. It's a perfect consistency
I'm
too.
gonna add a little bit of pepper.
The consistency is like a milkshake.
Ooh, yeah.
Like a thick milkshake.
Not a chunk in there, is there?
And it like a light garlic.
Good.
The perfect amount of
taste. And that's my potatoes. My potatoes are ready. If you notice, they're, blended.
Like a thick milkshake.
Not chunky at all. So now we're gonna go over, and what I'm gonna show you how to do is make a roux. And a roux is more or less you're browning your flour, so it's butter and flour. If you're not, when you're using flour in anything kind of thing for a thickener, which is what I'm going to be using it for here, you always really need to cook it first. I do this in all my recipes, even it says to mix my flour. Like you can mix it in with your vegetables, like right when you're browning your like onions or what have you. But I'll always just make it, by itself, and like on Thanksgiving and stuff. Like I said, if you're not browning your flour before you put it in your gravy, that's why your flour tastes like. I'm gonna make my roux.
What is a roux again?
It's just, I'm going to basically brown my flour, and flour is a grain, as we all know. So I'm just gonna get my butter cooking and melting here, and as soon as that kind of starts to go a little bit.
How much butter is that?
That's about 2 tablespoons. Yeah, 1.5 tablespoons of butter. It doesn't really matter. What I'm trying to get is about 4 teaspoons of flour out of this, but since I'm going to use it as a thickener, I'll actually burn my butter. So I'm just going to take it off the heat there for a second. So there we go. So then I'm just going to cook it. Reduce my heat to about 6.5. And I'm going to cook this, and it will start to have a little brown tinge to it. It'll take maybe 3 or 4 minutes. And what this does is when your flour's cooked, it'll make it so it's not grainy anymore. Like, if you were making cream of wheat or something like that, kind of softens it up and makes it so that it'll go in your sauces, and you actually won't really taste the flour. It'll just thicken whatever you're making. So we're gonna set aside our roux. If you notice, it's just got a little brown to it. Like that took me about maybe 2 or 3 minutes, like I said. And now the flour's cooked, so I'm just gonna set that aside. I'm gonna add about a cup, maybe a cup and a half of beef broth.
And here is a translucent onion. And then here is a regular onion. And here's the difference between a translucent and a non-cooked onion.
I'm going to let this simmer, so I'm actually going to turn this up to about 5.5 or medium. I'm going to add a little bit, maybe a half a cup of red wine.
My wine!
Oh, Jill, it'll be worth it. Okay, so we're just going to reduce this a little bit. So I've got the beef broth and the wine, and that's going to go in there, and I'm going to reduce this for a minute.
And what is reduce, just in case you haven't seen our other videos?
Reduce means that I'm going to cook off some of the liquid and thicken the sauce a little bit. And what it's doing is it's just giving it a little bit more flavor because of some of the water is coming off. So, in the meantime, I'm going to add the frozen corn. And the reason I'm using frozen corn is because, it's Oregon, it's winter. Corn and vegetables really aren't in season right now, so, it doesn't really matter either way. Maybe in the summertime when corn was in season, I would use fresh corn, but for our purposes tonight, I'm just going to use this whole kernel frozen corn. Jolly Green Giant, yo.
Are you using the whole bag?
No, I'm just gonna kind of guess. I'm just gonna mix it up a little bit and see, spread it around, see how much. I don't really want a ton of anything, and I think that looks, about right to me.
It's really pretty too. I like all the colors.
It's really a matter of what you like, so I don't go strictly by the recipe. If there's something you don't like in the recipe, if it's not mandatory to the recipe, you definitely don't have to put it in. If you don't like peas or you don't like corn, I wouldn't make it without the onions, and I wouldn't make it without the garlic, and I definitely wouldn't make it without the beef because it would suck, or it wouldn't be shepherd's pie, I guess I could say. But what I'm trying to do is kind of get, I want there to be a gravy here, so okay. A little bit more. Is going to add a little bit more beef broth. Turn my temperature a little bit. I'm gonna add my peas. About the same amount of peas, maybe half a cup peas-ish. Half a cup of corn. You know, I use 2 onions. I like onions. You know, the recipe calls for 1 onion, I believe.
I'm not usually a pea fan, but in stuff like this, the gravy and the flavor soaks into the vegetables, and it gives it a really good flavor.
Definitely, and this smells really good already. I mean, it's got a nice...
It's like you're walking by a really good restaurant, and it makes you want to go into that restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
That is what this smells like.
Mm-hmm. Teaspoon or so of Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire sauce is actually, I believe, it's made from sardines and some other things. I'm going to add a little bit of beef bouillon. You can use cubes, but I'm just going to use this liquid. Put about a teaspoon of that. Just going to add flavor to it, a more beefy flavor. A little bit more. Just stir it around. Let's see how that tastes. Tastes great. And then I'm gonna leave this, I would say, I'm gonna stir this a couple times, but I'm just gonna let it simmer. And simmer means barely boiling. You definitely don't want to have a full boil on this because you're gonna burn it. You know, burn it on the bottom. But you know, a simmer where the liquid in this dish is, you know, just, you know, barely boiling. You know, and that's the fastest way to get off the moisture. As soon as that's done, I'm gonna add the roux that I made, which is the flour and the butter that I cooked together, and that's gonna finish thickening this sauce. Okay, so we're just gonna finish up our meat here and such. We're gonna add about 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. Go for it. Since we got the whole can, put that right on there. This is going to act as a thickener too. So first I'm going to stir this in and just kind of see what we got here. You know, I still have beef broth if I needed to thicken it up a little more or thin it down. Thin it down a little bit more. I'm just going to stir this around really good. Okay, so I've got my tomato paste all stirred around in here. You know, this is kind of what we got. We got sauce that's, you know, not super thick, but not super thin. I want this to be pretty saucy because I like it that way. So, you know, we've got a pretty good sauce, and like when I cook it in the oven, it's also going to thicken a little bit more. So I'm just going to add a little bit of my roux. Stir that around really good and see what we got. And because I cooked this already, just like with your gravies, and anytime you're making any gravies, you're gonna make a roux. And you can make gravies with all sorts of things. You know, that's why you have a broiler pan and you're supposed to put water in the bottom of your broiler pan, and the drippings from your roast or your turkey or whatever you're gonna make will drip into that pan, and if you put a little bit of water in, it won't burn it, and then you can make a gravy with it, which is always really awesome. I mean, to make a gravy with the meat that you cook, or the meat that, you know, the beef or the chicken or whatever. I think that's pretty good, so I'm not really going to add any more, and that's why I like to put that in last, is because that way I know how much I think I need to put in, and that's kind of what I'm looking for. So now I'm going to just come over here, I'm going to put this in our pan.
So you're saying that a roux is just another thickener?
Yeah, it's just going to just thickens your gravy. I mean, otherwise it would be really runny, so I'm just going to dump that all into my
it's
my
beautiful,
dish
and it smells
here.
so good.
So good. So I'm just going to smooth that out really quick. looks so good, doesn't it? Then I'm gonna take my mashed potatoes that I've already made here. And then I'm just gonna kind of dollop that on top.
I like the word dollop. And what was the story about the shepherd's pie you were telling me?
About when it was made in, that was a Scottish dish. It was made in the
And it was the poor man's dish?
1700. Yeah, it's definitely a poor man's dish. I mean, I guess you would make it with a minimal amount of meat. I mean, it would never be made like this traditionally with, you know, this much meat. I mean, this would be complete American gluttony. But
So why was it called the poor man's dish?
well, because they, you know, at some times in history, people were, you know, all they lived on was potatoes, and so, you know, they tried to think of different ways to make potatoes, and you were lucky if you got a little meat to go, you know, with your food, and then you would try to stretch it as far as you could, you know, as far as you possibly could. It's just like with Asian cooking. I mean, it would be mostly vegetables, rice, and maybe just a tiny little bit of meat. You know, as Americans, we eat way more than they would in most countries. And one thing about cooking at home is it's not like readily available. So if you're not putting tons of food in your cupboards, that's just readily available, that you can microwave, that you can, you know, stick on your stove and make in 10 seconds, like macaroni and cheese. You know, if you're actually having to spend time to make meals, you know, you're actually, you know, having to go time between them, and it's not easy to, you know, just eat tons of food. So, you know, people, you know, like in Italy and such, they eat a lot of food, or, you know, they sit around and they have 3 meals a day, but, you know, they wait in between. The food isn't readily available, and they spend a lot of time eating it, and they spend a lot of time cooking it. And so, you know, on the whole, you know, you're spending a lot of calories just making your food and eating your food, you know, sitting around, and thus versus, you know, eating something that you can get in 10 seconds or fast food. So I have my oven heated to 350. I'm going to grate my cheddar cheese on here.
Now, is there a reason why you use specific cheeses?
You could have used Parmesan cheese with this. Just like traditionally, as a Scottish dish, they probably use lamb. I don't know if I even like lamb that much, so I just used ground beef. You know, I figure we're kind of here just cooking food that's, you know, more simple and easy, and maybe for a family to make, you know, still tastes really good. But
And how much cheese are you putting on top of there?
I'm just going to kind of lightly cover the whole top of it. I would say it's probably a cup and a half of cheddar cheese. I'm just going to kind of...
Is there a specific way to grate, and is there a reason why you use specific graters?
Yeah, like this is a medium soft cheese, and so I would use, and because I'm gonna melt it on, I can just use this bigger thing, whereas it has a slicer. Because this is a semi-soft cheese, if I use this smaller one, the smaller graters, then it's kind of gonna gum up a lot. This is more, these are graters are for more of a hard cheese like Parmesan, Assaggio, Romano, things like that. And same with here if you wanted a really fine cheese, but these are for more of a really hard cheese. And that's why you have those different things. So got our oven preheated, cheese grated, and we're just gonna pop it in the oven, and we're gonna put it in here 30 to 45 minutes, I would say, or until the cheese and the top are browned.
All right, girls, a quick tip. You see this? That's raw meat on the stove. You definitely, after you use any raw meat in any recipe, you want to use a cleaner. Or I got these Norwex, very awesome cloths, and they have a silver in here that disinfects raw meat. So remember, please be safe when you're cooking. We don't want any cooking accidents. I love you.
And now for the good part. You know, what we've all been waiting for. For about 40 minutes in the oven. Gonna take it out. Look at that. That
Oh,
was
it
tasty.
smells like
So good.
so amazing.
Let that sit for a little bit because it's really hot.
And
you
there we
it.
have it.
Yep,
Woo.
shepherd's pie.